All right, hey data rock stars. Welcome back. It's been a while. We've got another video today. It's on the social media algorithms. So always in the news, especially recently, we are going to talk about the different algorithms of whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, Be Real, whatever we're talking about. It's talking about the order in which we see things on that feed page. So it didn't always used to be that. Facebook actually used to focus on your profile page itself, and that's where all the action was. You would not only post your user-generated content like videos, pictures, status text updates, you would also post news articles and things there, and your friends would post news articles on your page. A little aggressive, but that's how they did it. And they actually moved to the newsfeed style algorithm where you would have this personalized newspaper for you based on all of your friends, family, brands, and other pages that you follow, all organized into a nice little newsfeed. And at first it was chronological, just based on time, and they pulled it. And then as they evolved the product over the years, it would just keep adding to that personalization and the relationships between you and others and the other attributes that then would rank where you would see that in your feed and how fast. So we'll talk a lot more about all of those different features, but why do we want to do that? There's three reasons. We want to make sure that the content that you create has the most impact possible. You don't want to just be talking into a void, or you also want to be sure you're being financially responsible with your return on investment. So you created all this great content. You hired photographers, you hired designers, you hired editors, you hired copywriters, you hired all these people to do all of these amazing things. And you want to make sure you're efficient in using that and that people are actually receiving that content and then being able to enjoy it, watch it, purchase, or whatever you want to have them do with it in the end. And so we want to become a producer of content that is trusted, so that way we are able to be placed higher in that feed and frequently instead of dismissed or ignored and not in the feed. So what is the inventory of posts that we have to choose from to be able to place in that feed ranking? So it could be a lot of things. So up on the screen, we have just, a list of post IDs. I don't have the actual content up there, but there's the different types of attributes about those posts. Are they trending? Do they have a back and forth on comments? Is it what type of post is it? Is it from your family or friends or brands? And are there any penalties? Is it marked as spam or hide or things like that? So whatever this is, it's just this whole catalog of all of the possible posts that could be slotted up in all those spaces on our feed as we infinitely scroll down into oblivion, and we need to choose it. So we will choose which ones to rank by calculating it out. So how do we do that? We do that through a number of different ranking signals. So there's the relationship. So who do you typically interact with? Not just are they your family, or are they your family that you always like a picture of no matter what they post? Or do you never like their post, depending on which family member or friend that might be? Also, when did they post it? Was it recent or not? And so it used to be all that chronological feed, but now recency is still very important. So depending on if you're someone that logs in every day or once a month, that recency thing might be a little bit different, but there's kind of an urgency to certain things like an event or something like that, or a change in relationship status that might bump it up in the feed. So there's also popularity, of course. There's likes and engagements and all that other sort of thing. That is one of the signals as well. And then you can choose to boost or not to different types of content. So as they expanded to video and making that more of a priority, maybe that gets bumped up higher than just a text status update. And often, whether it's native content where you upload the actual video to Facebook instead of like a link to a YouTube video that's embedded there, they have choices to make on if that content type is equally boosted or lower in the scheme of things there. All right, so Facebook itself came up with the concept of meaningful social interaction, so an MSI. So what it's really just trying to uncover is this post meaningful, like kind of deeper than just a like or something like that. So they've got a lot of different ways to rank these things by adding a point value internally. So they don't have this externally, but the Wall Street Journal is able to uncover some of those actual weightings to things like a like being worth a point, other types of reshares without a reply is worth 5. And then if you start to have a significant comment or message or reshare, that's more like 30 points, like an RSVP. So that's a huge weighting compared to those other things. So if I RSVP to a music festival in Salt Lake City in March, that would be worth 30 points, and someone might see that in my feed or in their feed of me a lot sooner than some article that I click like on. All right. So we'll look at this later on, but of those things, we have in that social feed MSI, all sorts of different pieces, and we can rank those posts on that. And I can even visualize it there on the left, just colored circles. But the idea is that some posts will be stronger in one thing versus another, and then you'll end up giving it a score, which we can use to rank it. And there's some great podcasts on this. The Outrage algorithm on Wall Street Journal covers this really well. So definitely check that out as a further reading. So social media algorithm penalties are also pretty fascinating. So of course, you're familiar with some posts that are more spammy, some that are more scammy with actual like phishing and things like that for like a crypto scam, or there's also different penalties that we'll come up with here, like, like baiting, like this post. So if you actually wrote, please like this post, that's actually considered a penalty. I know in some cases like YouTube, that's kind of like what they do is like and subscribe. There's the whole culture around that. And so that's a little bit different than here on Facebook, but there's a number of other penalties you could have as well. So text-only status updates or posts that are frequently hidden or reported. So sometimes hidden is just you're not interested in it, and it's a brand that maybe posts the yoga schedule every week, and you're like, I don't want to see that, and then just trying to give the algorithm information for you, but you might not want to take that into account in the algorithm that you choose to design or not. It's kind of a general word that could be a number of different things. I don't think it's actually a great one. They should probably break that up into very different categories, but that is the way it is currently. And we will be able to work with that in our calculations. So these are all leading towards, how likely you are to engage with posts is their prediction. And that's why they're trying to place it higher up in the feed. If you're never going to engage and you're never going to do anything and you're just going to keep scrolling, they want to find something that'll keep you, on the app as long as possible, and also connected with them as a monthly and daily active user, that they're able to monetize through advertising and that you're happy with the product. They're not always doing great at that now, but they want to have that as a goal. And so they want to understand if you're likely to comment on stories, you're going to read them for a long time, you're going to watch a video all the way through the end, and that sort of thing. So they also have this relevance score where it's your likelihood to click, your likelihood to comment and share, and things like that. So that relevance score is something they track. So obviously the TikTok algorithm is quite a bit different than this. One of the things the Wall Street Journal was able to reverse engineer using their own bots to see what would happen with the different accounts. They were able to track exactly what happened when you would first sign up for an account, and then how that FYP page or For You page is crafted and what mattered and didn't matter. And the surprise at the time, which I think is pretty well known now, is that the more you watch and rewatch, it is able to, figure out that FYP page without you even ever liking something. So before, a lot of those algorithms were pretty tied to, did you like, did you subscribe, did you comment, which they still are to some extent. But the power of the TikTok algorithm really is just on watches and rewatches. And that's particularly interesting because you're able to, even without having followers, like on Instagram, having millions of followers is really what is the ability to get into people's feeds. They still need to be able to engage with it, watch it, and like it, and things like that. But you really do have a shot at virality, or even just a decent amount of likes, starting from a fresh new account, using a trending song, and creating content that engages. So that is a drastically different approach than Instagram. So on Instagram, obviously, it's still, even though it's shifting towards Reels, and it's shifting towards that model as well of that exploratory discovery, they built their business, and the creators' businesses that made millions of dollars and got millions of followers on that idea of having who you follow as what's weighted in your feed. So those larger accounts want to continue to be successful, and they aren't too happy about shifts towards that. So to some extent, every time there are changes, people do not love changes as they're used to the way things are. That said, they did build their businesses on those rules, and there's definitely, some tension in the air around that as those algorithm changes occur. So obviously people have different opinions on when things change. So like I said before, Facebook used to not even have a feed. And when they did, there was a lot of hullabaloo, I guess, around that. And every time there is a change, there is that kind of adjustment period. And whether it is a good change or not, you usually don't know initially. It's more of, can people end up adopting or adopting the new features and adapting to using it in that way? And do they then thrive and enjoy the product for years to come and then evolve again? And they may or may not. So sometimes changes go back, but it is something to keep in mind that all platforms will have changes and all people will have strong reactions to that change. So YouTube's a little bit different. So there are a number of different attributes there. A couple I'm going to call out on the upload frequency. So this channel in particular is not super frequent usually during the whole year. Last fall, there was probably a new video every week. And so they were probably boosting me in the feed for more people based on that. And since I haven't posted since then, even though this is a new video, because I'm not a frequent producer, they're probably not going to recommend it to as many people. They might do a small test where it algorithmically sends it out to 20 people, and then no one watches it, then maybe it won't send it out to any more at all. But if 100% of them do, I'll probably send it to the rest of my subscribers and go from there. Other things to look out for too is the optimal video duration, and that changes over time. Right now, maybe it's 7 to 16 minutes. I'm not sure what the exact latest numbers are, but it's something to consider as you design the content for the platform that you'll be watching in. Obviously, YouTube Shorts is something that's picking up quite a bit as well. But what you want to create for that actually gets watched is something that will also influence where in the feed that you'll show up with your content. Also, the description and keyword tags are huge here. Beyond just the hashtags and everything, it is a very important way for the feed to pick up on what the video is about, especially the title. That's why you'll see sometimes some super long titles there. And then the thumbnail is very big for YouTube. Obviously, you can see how that kind of changes what creators will put on there. You'll see a big excited face of a person and then some action about to happen. People will even A/B test different types of thumbnails where you might have a basketball and a saying that's like fixed, and then one that's in motion in the air, and you're like anticipating it shooting over a waterfall. And that kind of thumbnail tends to generate a lot more interest and gets people to click a lot more often. So one of the most important things to do in YouTube content, of course. So what we're going to do today is create our own social media algorithm. So we do have the ability to really create what we want. So a lot of people complain about the algorithms and say they are worried about what it's doing to us as a society and culture, or just kind of negative things about the different platforms, and call them up to Capitol Hill to have a sort of interview. But what we can do about this is actually create it ourselves. So what would happen if we were the product manager at a company that's a social platform, and we had to make the choices on what calculation to use when for what outcome? And it may not end up being the outcome that we expect it to be. We don't have any perfect knowledge of what people will do or the future. So we're going to do the best we can with those pieces of information that we've discovered throughout all those articles and see if we can tweak the calculations a bit and see what happens. So we will hop over to Tableau. So on Tableau Public, I have published the workbook that you can download, and it is in the description below. So go ahead and do that, and we will design our own algorithm. So there's a whole bunch of stuff you'll see when we'll pull it up in a second, and the components I'm going to call out to are just a few. So there are calculations called social feed, and then engagement, worst, and closeness. And I just have a sample calculation there of what might create one of those outcomes, and you can choose whichever one you would like to design. And it has a base for us to work with that we'll bring up in a second. And then we have the meaningful social interaction score, the MSI, and we also have a penalty score. So there's a couple of calculations that make it a little bit easier to understand, but we'll just look at penalties and we'll be able to add or remove components and then change the weighting of those to make it have the outcome that we would like. So this is a little preview of that. all you do in Tableau, if you haven't been there before, is on the left side, there's the top part of the screen are dimensions like categories and dates and things like that. In the lower left, there are measures, so the numbers you're measuring, so the number of likes, and also their calculations. So this, for example, on the right is the calculation for penalties. And so you can right click on that on a PC or command click on a Mac and click edit. And so this pop-up will come up. And for example, for these penalties, you have clickbait is a penalty of 4 or spam links 10. And you can adjust whatever that penalty is. This is just a starter set for you. And it may or may not meet the outcome of what you want. So if you want to make the worst algorithm ever, then maybe doesn't matter if they're a spam, maybe it's a -10 and you like want to encourage spam. I don't know. So you could just modify these however you see fit to create the outcome that you want from your social media feed algorithm. So here's a few examples as well. It's in the Tableau, but just so you can see it here on the screen, there's the engagement calculation on the left, meaningful social interaction in the middle, and the total penalty score on the right, which actually includes negative feedback, which, like I mentioned, is kind of complex and may or may not be a bad thing. So basically, create the algorithm by, editing the calculations, and it's not a mystery. This is what it creates. Like eventually AI will be kind of a little bit of a black box on certain components, but I imagine the algorithm itself will hopefully feed into the categories. So at least you could break it down into the category of spam penalties instead of it just being an entire black box. It hopefully will just roll up to those individual pieces that you'll be able to control, and we'll have some fun doing that. So let's pop into Tableau and check it out. So this is what it looks like. There's a little bit of instructions. There's some readings as well, which will be in the description below, talking through some of the ideas that this came from. And it's really just a few graphs and tables that get you kind of used to the data. So in the real life, they're actually programming this. They're in databases, and then they're in the actual programming languages looking at the variables. But we are not developers on this channel. We are just trying to explore the data in a different way to get a feel for what all the dynamics are of the situation and be able to ask for what we want to create. So this is the inventory posts, for example, and you can kind of click through here and see some of the different ways to see the different calculations. And if you edit them, you might see a change because the numbers will change when you tweak those different weights. So let's start off and just pop in quickly to social feed and choose one of these. So I'll choose engagement, right-clicking that and edit. And you can see, try to get it on one line, hit enter there. So you can see it takes the MSI and then it multiplies reactions by 5. So they're that important to this. But you can see an example here. So if someone has a back and forth in that social media post, it'll multiply it by 20. So they're really trying to push engagement here. So you can really think through the logic of whatever you want to happen in the feed and figure out if these elements are important or not and how they compare to each other. So if that consistent producer is something important to you, so then maybe do that. I personally think the quality of a YouTube video has nothing to do with how consistent you are producing, but that's just me and my inconsistently produced channel, and you could just maybe multiply that by 0. So say that's not important to you, and that doesn't matter. Yeah, so go ahead and modify that. Next up on that component in there is the MSI, and you can look at these components similarly and make the call on whether long-form comments from friends or friends of friends are important, whether shares and direct messages are important or not. So just tweak those how you see fit. And the final one is the set of penalty scores. So total penalty score, if you look at it, is the penalty calc plus negative feedback times 1.